Well, as the old joke goes, I have some good news and I have some bad news for all of us. First, the good news about ignorance, which is defined in the Catholic Encyclopedia as a lack of knowledge about a thing in a being capable of knowing. The good news is that ignorance is said to be invincible when a person is unable to rid himself of it, notwithstanding the employment of moral diligence. That is to say, when we've done everything we can, morally speaking, to learn the truth. Invincible ignorance, our source assures us, is always a valid excuse and excludes sin. Now the bad news. We may be at fault, we may be in a state of sin, if we allow the existence of evil even when we're ignorant of it. If that ignorance is vincible, if it can be, quote, dispelled by the use of moral diligence, in a word such as a really sensible and prudent person would use under the circumstances. A sad fact that I'd like to share with you today in my presentation is that there's really nothing new in it. It represents no new theory, no new data, no new ideas. It's rather a synthesis of ideas, data, and theories that have been at all of our fingertips for years. My thesis is simply this, that with all the information at our disposal, with all the vast resources of mass communication technologies available to us, we are ignorant of our world, and worse, we're happy in our ignorance. We're guilty of an ignorance easily dispelled, a supremely vincible ignorance. And if this is so, we, all of us, myself included, should be ashamed. This is the bad news that I'm referring to. A popular television show of recent years has told us week after week that the truth is out there. The truth is out there, and the extent to which we don't see it or won't see it is a measure of our human imperfection. To live in a world where we don't have to see the ugly realities of life is to live in a world of fantasy. And such a world may make us feel more secure, more comfortable, but it's not helping anyone in the world. And in truth, it's not helping us. But are we really ignorant? And are we really to blame? In a mass culture such as ours, we depend on our electronic mass media of communication to be our eyes and our ears, our window on the world. More than that, as Marshall McLuhan liked to point out, the network of transoceanic and transcontinental cables and the vast system of satellites floating miles above the Earth, linking the world together through radio, television, telephone, and computers, can function as a sort of global central nervous system, moving all of humanity closer and closer to becoming a single global organism. But I suggest that our eyes and our ears are closed, and deliberately so, consciously so. I suggest that for all the millions and billions of dollars spent every year on expanding the communication potential of the human species, for all the hundreds of channels of broadcast and cable programming, for the hundreds of thousands of radio outlets worldwide, for the amazing rise of cellular technology, for all that it appears that human beings are more closely linked to each other and to the world than ever before, we in fact learn and know very little of our world, and we have used our communication technologies, paradoxically, deliberately, to cut ourselves off from it. But how can this be? We live, after all, in the much vaunted information age, in an age where we seem, by all appearances, to be in tune with everything that's going on around us. We're all connected, as the old phone company advertisement used to say. We wake every morning to a litany of disasters, scandals, crimes, and controversies. We know what the weather will be like for the next 5 days in New York, Chicago, and Phoenix. We know whether our stocks have made or lost money in the last 2 hours, and whether our favorite baseball team won last night. We believe that we have more information at our fingertips than any people in the history of humankind, and we're right. And we believe that we have enough information to make responsible, ethical choices in our lives, and we're wrong. So much of what we know today seems meaningless. It seems to matter so little to the realities of life. O.J. Simpson, sex in the White House, Greta Van Susteren's facelift, a deadlocked presidential election. And it's not that these stories are uninteresting or unimportant to someone, but that point is not entirely indefensible either. And when we are finally attacked brutally, mercilessly, lawlessly, when innocent Americans are killed, when violence rears its ugly head, we are shocked and we ask, why do they hate us? There seems to be no reasonable explanation other than pure evil, and no responsible way to fight it other than war. But perhaps we've missed something. Henry Perkinson, in his book Getting Better, Television and Moral Progress, illustrates the many ways in which television acts as a window on the world, revealing to us the good, the bad, and the ugly of human experience. When we watch televised violence, we recoil from it because that is our nature. When we see injustice portrayed on television, we're outraged and we want to see justice prevail. Television portrays the world as it really is, or as it seems to be, and we can use this external eye to objectively evaluate the state of the world and to improve it. Some examples he cites for the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, and he believes that these were helped by the emergence of television. Images of men and women in peaceful protest being beaten by police, attacked by dogs, swept off their feet by powerful fire hoses, brought home to America the injustices of inequality. The powerful emotional images entering our homes night after night sparked our sympathy for Americans of African descent and changed our minds about accepting the status quo of Jim Crow segregation. In a sense, we saw the light. The nightly broadcast of the Vietnam War in the 1960s and the 1970s was probably largely responsible not for the end of the war, but for the collapse of American popular support for the war. Images of U.S. Marines lighting the thatched roofs of villages with lighters, of Colonel Nguyen Nhat Lone blowing the brains out of a Viet Cong spy on a Saigon street, of napalm strikes in which South Vietnamese children were mistaken for North Vietnamese troops. And here at home, the death of 4 American college students at Kent State University in Ohio all took a collective toll on the American conscience. Again, perhaps we saw the light. Far from being a window on the world, television seems to be becoming, in our American culture at least, a mirror. The narcissistic power of material consumption seems to accompany an urge to attend more closely to ourselves than to the outside world. Our mass media outlets are very good at selling things to us. Advertising is a $200 billion industry in the United States alone, but only, it seems, able to sell to us the things that we want to buy. Our news tends to be sensational and very entertaining, and we see little of the outside world.